Good morning. I always love these. This is an opportunity to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Methadone treatment providers are normally on the outlier of treatment. We don't have that luxury anymore, so we are very much now on the front lines, just like all of you. Down the rabbit hole is a term we use for a life in chaos. What I started to do with the permission of some of my clients is to tell their stories. There was a woman named Amy, and she went down the rabbit hole. She was 16 years old. She was an incredibly unremarkable young woman. She was a B student, and she hated math. She loved literature. She was not popular. She occasionally drank a beer at a party. She was still a virgin. She made her friends laugh. And she had a secret crush on Heath Ledger. And she dreamt of being famous, but she didn't know what she'd be famous for, but she really wanted to be famous. She did not know she was pretty. And the boys weren't smart enough to know she was beautiful. She was much loved by her friends. They could tell her anything. Amy was only 16 when the car that she was in, coming home from color guard practice, was T-boned by a truck at a stop sign. One of the girls was killed. She hurt her back, her neck, and her leg was shattered. She was rushed to the hospital. Her parents met her there. They were so grateful she was alive. The doctors put her on morphine and warned the parents that there was going to be a very long road back, and they had no idea what was happening to her. The CDC, in their Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, which is a lovely title for anything, did research, and they found that a person put on a one-day prescription has a 6.7% chance of permanently altering their brain chemistry. If they're given a 30-day prescription, they have a 30% of permanently altering the brain's ability to produce the neurotransmitters that stimulate the mu receptors and make you function. So I want you to think about that. A wrestler who hurts his knee is put on Vicodin. He has an almost 7% chance of never being able to produce the opioids in his brain that he requires to function normally. Women are more likely to have chronic pain, and they are more likely to be prescribed pain relievers. Women are more likely to be given prescriptions at higher doses. They are given pain relievers for longer periods of time. And women become addicted faster in something called telescoping. Our bodies simply metabolize it differently. The numbers are they are increasing at such a fast pace that some of my dates are old, but I can't get the new numbers. They're changing so quickly. So between 1999 and 2010, 48,000 women that we know of died of just prescription painkillers. Amy went on to rehab, and she was put on pain medication. She missed the winter dance, the spring formal, she healed, and her friends started to drift away because they were very, very busy. She became very depressed and found that she felt physically ill if she did not take her medication. She turned 17, and she found that the pills that the doctors had prescribed her were no longer adequate. Her leg was very scarred, and she felt ugly and it made her sad, and so she started to take 1 pill more than was prescribed. And then she took 2, and then she took 3. The doctors kept prescribing. Amy turned 18, and she managed to graduate from high school, but she'd lost touch with her closest friends, and she found new friends in the people who knew where to get the pills. She was from a very, very wealthy community, and they were easy to come by. She spent all of the money that she had saved from her summer jobs. She sold her clothes on Let Go and her purse. Pills are $30 a pop on the street. And that's a lot of money for an 18-year-old to come up with. So she started taking things. She didn't know what was happening to her when she turned to the doctor. He said, they're prescribed. However, her doctor started getting concerned when she started coming up with excuses for why she needed new prescriptions. The dog ate them. They fell in the toilet. Her friends stole them. And finally, they decided to cut her off because physicians don't know how to properly titrate down off of an addiction. Amy's family noticed the change in her. She was less sunny. She was less open. And they always assumed it was because of her leg, and they had no idea what was happening inside of her. When the doctors finally decided to cut her off, she was cool with that until she went into full-blown withdrawals. And she described it as somebody crawling inside of her body and breaking every bone. She couldn't stand the pain. So she started buying more pills, stealing more, and hiding them in the bed frame, which, as home health care workers, please be aware that that is a favorite hiding place, in the legs of the beds. She slid further and further into this world. She managed to finish some college. She held a job. She showed up at Thanksgiving dinner, but she wasn't Amy anymore. Addiction is a chronic, relapsing brain disease, and it's characterized by compulsive drug-seeking use despite catastrophic consequences. Opioids change the structure of the brain. It is not a matter of will. It is chemistry. Dependence develops when neurons adapt to the repeated drug exposure and they only function normally when exposed to this drug. It's important to understand that we're all born with perfectly balanced brains. We produce the natural opioids that we need to function. What happens is that when you expose those receptors to an excessive amount, the cells that produce the natural opioids in your brain first go to sleep, and then they begin to die. Also, what happens is that there is a transference of a message from the cortex, which is your rational part of your brain, to the limbic part. Now, the limbic part of your brain is a little walnut-shaped part of your brain that deals with survival impulse. So when a client or a patient says to you, I don't know why I'm doing this, they don't know why they're doing this. Because the brain is telling, subconsciously, this body, if you do not seek this drug and use it, you will die. Intellectually, they know that that's not true. They're just going to get messy and feel really, really bad. But the brain is telling them that you must use this drug to survive. So when you see irrational behavior, self-destructive behavior, and you say, why are you doing this? And they say, I don't know. Believe them. They don't know. Just some numbers. Every 19 minutes, someone dies of an accidental overdose. Last year, 64,000 people died. It was strange. I was driving through Washington Township yesterday, and in front of a church, there's a billboard, and on it said, overdose deaths. And there was a 30 with a line through it, and somebody had written 31. That's in this year alone. 31 deaths in a small rural town. And they put it on a billboard, just as a reminder. In 2014, 1.9 million people were addicted to prescription pills, and they counted 586,000. We know that those numbers are very small. The last thing I heard is that there's approximately 22.5 million people addicted to some substance. In 2014, 259 million legal prescriptions were written. That's enough for every man and woman in this country to have their own bottle of OxyContin. 4 out of 5, every new heroin user started out using prescription pain relievers. And 94% use heroin now because prescription pills have become difficult to get. So even though we're cutting off that supply, we're not cutting off the heroin supply. It's coming in, most of it we know is coming in through northern Pennsylvania. It's called Heroin Road. It's now coming in mostly cut with fentanyl, and you've all heard the fentanyl stories. But it's being pre-cut. Before, our dealers were cutting it here in the state. Now it's coming in pre-cut, which is probably why we're seeing a higher mortality rate. Women often mistake signs of pregnancy for withdrawal symptoms. Many low and low-income women have never had a gynecological exam. Women with substance disorders are more likely to have mood disorders. They're more likely to have been emotionally traumatized or sexually traumatized. They are more likely to be victims of domestic violence, and they are more likely to have partners who are abusers and addicts as well. Women look, if they try to get into treatment, more often they are abandoned by their partners. They are more likely to relapse because of interpersonal problems. Drug use will diminish significantly during pregnancy. However, the most vulnerable time for relapse is right after birth. Most women require a multi-layer approach because they will need transportation, they will need housing, childcare, job training, and access to recovery support systems. Women view relationship building as essential treatment ingredient, and women recognize bias. If you judge them, they will know. Women fear more than anything that they will lose their children to the state. And children are removed quicker from women addicts than male addicts. So in the same household, if you have a mother who is using, the children will be removed quicker than if the male is using. They know that they are going to be judged, and that is because of the moral model. What's extraordinary is that men will not say, "I've been good today." Women will always say, "I'm good. I've been good today." We judge them on a moral model. They become bad women, bad mothers, bad daughters, bad sisters, but males are not held to that same standard. Women know that they have harmed their unborn child. They know they are going to be treated differently by nurses and doctors. They know that their family judges them. And you all look at them and you say, "You are pregnant, why can't you stop?" There's a lot of challenges. I met Amy when she was 4 months pregnant. The years have not been kind to her. Her family spent all their money on detoxes and rehabs, and unfortunately the numbers are not good. 98.9% of people who go into a detox cop on the way out of the facility. That's because being drug-free doesn't mean that your brain is working. So we can take the illicit drug from them, but if there's no support afterwards, then they have no choice in their minds but to go to Patterson, Irvington, Camden, Trenton, or they just call their delivery service. In the wealthy communities, we do have a delivery service. It'll just come to your door. You don't even have to risk getting arrested. Her family saw intervention on television. They said tough love. Intervention is great if you have a lot of money to send them to a really nice rehab. Amy didn't have all those resources, but she was cut off. She finally, it's called jumping the shark. She couldn't afford the pills anymore. Finally, a friend gave her a little bag and said, "It's just $5. She swore she would never shoot up. And that lasted only a few months before somebody offered to find a vein. Understand what you're hearing in the language. A bundle is 10 bags. A brick is 50 bags. You can buy in bulk and get a deal. $5 is for an independent bag, $4 if you're buying in bulk. And if they show up at your door, you can pay up to about $10 a bag. Amy, when I met her, was using a brick a day. That's 50 bags of heroin. She was really, really skinny. She was on the streets. Her little belly was a little bowling ball. And somebody said, "I bet you're pregnant." And she said, "Nope, I'm not." So she went into Walgreens, stole a pregnancy test, peed in the alley, and found out she was pregnant. The doctor told her she went to Zufall Clinic. They said, "Stop using." She went to her mother, who said, "Stop using." She went to a pastor at a local church who said, "Stop using." But she'd heard on the street that if she stopped using, she could lose the baby, and that's true. So instead, she made a phone call that was very, very difficult. She called me. And that was the day she walked into my clinic. Right there. Opioids disrupt the menstrual cycle. On average, a woman is 12 weeks pregnant before she discovers she is pregnant. Pregnancy is not magical. It doesn't restore brain chemistry. It doesn't deal with the compulsive behaviors. And I want you to understand that opioid addiction is a twofold process. It is a chemical imbalance of the brain, and it is compulsive behavior. If you deal with one and you don't deal with the other, you have a person who is going to relapse. It is a two-pronged approach. We have to address the brain chemistry and the behavior. People think that once you find out you're pregnant, you're going to do everything to save that baby. And yes, you are, but you can't deal with that little monster inside of your head that is saying, if you do not get this drug and use it, you will die. There has always been a disconnect between addiction treatment and the medical community. The problems that a woman who is using illicit opioids faces is huge. The damage to the fetus is huge. The possibility of spontaneous abortion, of low APGAR scores, of preeclampsia, the medical challenges are enormous. So it is important that we get them as stable as possible, as quickly as possible. In 2015, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists finally said to the FDA, we have to approve medication-assisted treatment for pregnant women. We know through almost 40 years of study that providing women with a medication that stabilizes their brain chemistry engages them in treatment for a longer period of time. We also know that detoxing a pregnant woman leads to a much higher instance of miscarriage. Women who continue to use illicit substances, and please understand, we don't know what's in the cut. We don't know what's in those bags. They can get rat poison. They can get Drano. they can get baking powder, they can get sand, anything that cooks down, they don't care. But it takes 3 tiny grains of fentanyl to kill a person. They're the size of salt. 3 grains of salt can kill somebody. We have 2 choices right now. We have methadone and buprenorphine. What we found out when we were putting this together is that buprenorphine is not FDA approved. However, it is being prescribed. They are 2 different animals. One is an agonist and one is a partial agonist. Mu receptors go all through your body. They're through your brain, down your brainstem, down into your gut. Think of them as a test tube filled with spongy material. A full agonist goes all the way up to the top of that test tube. A partial agonist only goes halfway up. So if you've got somebody with a brick habit, there is absolutely no way buprenorphine is going to answer the withdrawal symptoms. So understand that there are 2 different medications. There was a study, NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, did the first study in 2012. And they discovered that for the most part, methadone and buprenorphine are safe. We do know more about methadone because we have so many years of study. Buprenorphine does result in milder NAS symptoms, shorter hospital stays, and less morphine used in tapering. However, methadone also results in higher treatment success. So we can retain them longer in treatment during pregnancy and after birth. This is because my daughter is trying to teach me how to put things on a PowerPoint. I love her. Basically, what this is showing you is that methadone does, and it doesn't matter what dose a woman is on. There is a suspicion that anything above 80 milligrams, we might be seeing slightly longer hospital stays with babies. However, it's kind of inconsistent. The numbers we're getting are inconsistent. However, we do know with methadone, if a child is registering withdrawal symptoms, their stays in the hospital are longer with methadone. We know that they are going to take higher doses of morphine to titrate down. Buprenorphine right now seems to address the neonate really, really well. Unfortunately, the retention rate is very, very bad. 62% of mothers drop out of treatment on buprenorphine, while only 29% drops out of the methadone. Most importantly, methadone does not have a ceiling effect. Buprenorphine does. Right now, they will prescribe anywhere between 16 and 32 milligrams of buprenorphine. 32 is the highest. However, anything above 16 and there is no actual effect. So if you have a woman whose cravings or whose withdrawal symptoms start to show up in the trimester and she's on buprenorphine and she's already hit her ceiling, there is absolutely no way we can go above that. With methadone, we have a lot of freedom. We can keep going up above those symptoms to keep her comfortable, because if she's comfortable, the baby's comfortable. Methadone is accessible. Buprenorphine right now is not. There is talk about putting them into OTP settings, but unfortunately right now it's through private physicians. Most of them that do not take Medicaid. So the accessibility. So unfortunately the numbers are this. It's normally $500 for the first visit and anywhere from $250 to $500 a month afterwards for medication. Most people do not have access to that. The thing is that you walk in, you get a 30-day script, and you walk away. However, you're giving 30 days of strips to a person with a compulsive disorder. And the chances of it lasting beyond a week is not really good. So then we have a pregnant woman with 30 days of strips. She uses it all, and then she's got 3 weeks, and she's going to have to use something, so she hits the streets. Methadone, on the other hand, is much more structured, and it's a real pain in the butt. I mean, it just is. We are highly structured, and I'm going to explain why. Again, methadone is associated with higher treatment, and when choosing a modality, doctors need to look into financial resources, the ability for transportation, because this is how a methadone clinic works. We do a screening. We determine if they're pregnant, we get them in that day if we have to. They are required to be in front of a nurse 6 days a week. There's only 32 clinics in the entire state of New Jersey. My clinic serves all of Morris, most of Warren, all of Sussex, most of Passaic, Mount Pocono, southern New York. So I have clients who come 2.5 hours every day to dose. Now that becomes a challenge if you've got a pregnant woman with 3 children and no car. So the logistic here has to show up. She has to put 3 car seats into the car. She has to put her 3 children into the car. They come 2.5 hours down the mountain. She walks into the clinic. We all stand there. We pull the babies out of the child seats. She walks up to the nurse. She doses. We walk her back out to the car. We put the babies back in the car seats, and she drives another 2.5 hours home. They work very hard to stay clean. In methadone, we require biweekly counseling. We do weekly drug screens. We have an intensive outpatient program. And that's a challenge because most places will not accept people on methadone. They consider them not clean. So NA is normally a hostile environment. So we have meetings at our place, which is more open to medication-assisted treatment. We encourage family support, we do full case management, and then we detox only if it's appropriate after birth. It is not easy. They are showing up every single day to get dosed. Breastfeeding. Absolutely. Encourage mothers to breastfeed with both methadone and buprenorphine. Somebody was saying that there is a rumor out there that fast metabolizing women might not be appropriate for breastfeeding. I spent last night researching it. I could find no empirical research on this, but I'll keep looking and see if there's anything. But right now, we absolutely encourage breastfeeding with both methadone and buprenorphine. Only trace amounts of either drug are transferred to the newborn. We do know that it probably lessens the NAS symptoms, and they can lower Finnegan scores. Again, we don't know enough about buprenorphine. There's just not enough time to look at it. It was approved in 2002 for non-pregnant women. It's being used now, but it was classed as, I believe, a Class C 2 years ago before they got rid of that class designation, that it might not be fully safe for pregnant women, so we don't know. But at this point, would I rather a person be on buprenorphine than heroin with fentanyl in it? Absolutely. What happened? She really struggled, Amy struggled to stabilize. It took a long time. People think that it's going to be a magical drug. It's not. It takes a long time to find a blocking dose, and that means that we've gone to the top of the receptor. Even though we dealt with the chemistry, her impulsive behavior was a problem. Her parents told her she exchanged one drug for another. Her doctor said, "You've exchanged one drug for another." People at NA told her she just exchanged one drug for another. And she was accused of drug seeking. She was told that DCP&P was going to be standing there to take her baby. And she felt ashamed every time she walked into her doctor's office for a checkup. She showed up 6 days a week. She showed up in a blizzard. I remember because I was there too, in the blizzard. She met with me every chance she got. And she wept a lot. She didn't know what had happened to her. And she really wanted to be the mother that this child deserved. She walked into my door one day with a shocked look on her face because she had wanted to use and she didn't. And that was the first time. We adjusted her methadone dose to address her changing metabolism. The first and third trimesters are the hardest. It's when they are growing body parts really fast. And so they will burn up they will metabolize the methadone even faster. We educated her every chance we got. And I watched her blossom. And I remember the first clean urine drug screen. And we celebrated and ran up and down the hall screaming. And then there was one more. And then there was one more. And I remember the first time I saw her smile. I remember when she picked the name for her daughter. And I remember when she got her first phase promotion. Just so that you understand, in methadone, every 3 months that you're clean, you get another take-home bottle. It's hard to get. And we celebrate again as you start up those phases. I remember when she asked me to meet with her family because they were really pushing for her to get off of the methadone. And I had to tell them that only 4 to 6% of people should stay on methadone the rest of their lives. But I never know which person that's going to be. And I couldn't guarantee that Amy was going to be one of them. Because what we're looking for is the ability for the brain to produce its own neurotransmitters, the natural opioids in the body. So normally what we do at the end of a treatment is that we slowly titrate a person down off of methadone, and then we encourage brain growth with things like, weirdly enough, playing Tetris. 3 minutes on Tetris can redirect the frontal lobe and the impulse. Walking in the woods, not in the mall, not in the suburbs. In the woods, they have discovered, there's studies out of Oxford and Princeton that indicate that for some reason that it fires the brain up on, it's remarkable. And what we want to do is stimulate the brain. But I can never guarantee, I can never tell a family who's going to be able to live medication-free. We had a baby shower for her because her family wouldn't. They thought that the baby was going to be taken away, and they didn't want to hurt. So everybody got together and we threw like one major baby shower. I remember getting the call at 11 p.m. that she'd given birth. And she was crying because the physician on call would not let her breastfeed. She put the doctor on the phone, and I got really salty. And I emailed all the peer-reviewed information from the NIH supporting breastfeeding, and they gave her her baby. Then I got another call from DCP&P. A social worker had mistaken her drowsiness for nodding off and didn't know the difference, and so called DCP&P. The social worker had said, "Did you shoot up?" And she said, "You can't shoot up methadone." Sorry, you just can't. So again, I got on the phone, and I wasn't salty this time. I was very understanding. I loved the NICU nurses. They were wonderful. And they made her feel like she was the perfect mother for this baby. She was one of the prettiest babies I've ever seen. And I remember thinking as I watched her, I'd never seen anybody so strong. And I had to remember that I had to watch really carefully because right after birth is when we see the biggest incidences of relapse. So we watched her really carefully and we all held our breath. But she stayed clean. And she stayed clean day after day, month after month, and year after year. She went back to school. She's a full-time mom. She's a full-time student. She has a full-time job. She went into social work. She was worried that her past was going to somehow make it impossible, but it's really what makes her wise and compassionate and strong. And her daughter looks like her. And her daughter loves puzzles and dancing, and she wants to marry a boy named Justin in her first grade. She started talking at 11 months old, and she has never stopped. Amy has chosen to remain on methadone. This was a choice she made. We discussed detox, but she's worried that it could destabilize her, and she doesn't want to risk this life she has built out of the ashes. She has stopped trying to justify her medical choices to her friends and her family and to doctors. She has chosen this path because she understands what it's like to be in chaos, and she's not willing to risk it. The beauty of my job, and I love my job, is that I'm going to be there for her. In my treatment modality, we establish long, rich relationships with people. I'm lucky. We have people in treatment 2 years, and we have people in treatment 30 years. So as long as I hang around, I get to watch people grow up and grow old and get funny and turn gray. I also get to watch them die. I'm going to be in the audience next year when Amy gets her master's in social work. She got a full ride, by the way. And I'm going to watch. And I will always admire her grace and her courage. And as you go forward, just remember there's a lot of Amy's out there. And I so appreciate all the work that you do. Thank you for letting me tell her story.